Hello, my name is Susan Wells. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Newport County. I'd like to welcome you to this forum tonight. You will be hearing from the at-large city council candidates from wards 1, 2, and 3 for Newport. This forum is a collaboration between the Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters Newport County, Alliance for a Livable Newport, East Bay TV, Newport Buzz, Newport This Week, and WADK. The purpose of the collaboration is to inform Newport voters. I would like to point out the positions of any of the collaborators do not reflect the viewpoints or opinions of the group. It is also important to point out that Alliance for a Livable Newport, the League of Women Voters, and Newport This Week are nonpartisan and do not endorse candidates. The forum recording can be viewed through the collaborators' websites, on social media, public access TV, and listening on WADK radio, where candidates have also been invited to come back and expand on the views on the radio that they've expressed tonight in the forum. We encourage, tonight's questions have been a combined effort of the Alliance for Livable Newport, the Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters, and other members of the collaboration. We encourage viewers to watch for other upcoming forums and past forums, including forums for the candidates for the 17 candidates for Middletown Town Council, Middletown Newport School Committees, Newport City Council, and other state offices. Again, thank the candidates for participating tonight. Our timer tonight is Maureen up in the blue up in the corner. She will warn candidates when they are 15 seconds and then when their time is up. And I'd like to introduce your moderator, Cheryl Robinson, who is president of the Turning Around Ministries, where she's been their leader for 15 years. Now, Cheryl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Tonight, we have the 6 ward candidates. For Ward 1, we have Hugo Diaz and Angela McCalla. On Ward 2, we have Charlie Holder and Kim Salerno. Ward 3, Kate Leonard and Paul Marshall. For all watching, here's an overview of the forum. It will last 90 minutes and will consist of 4 parts. Candidates will begin with 90-second opening statements. Names were drawn at random for order and will rotate from one ward to the other with each question. There will be 5 questions. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. There will be a few yes or no questions, which the candidates raising their hands to indicate their responses. They will also be given an opportunity to explain their response after all questions have been asked. The forum will end with a 90-second closing statement. As stated before, Maureen Mooney from the League of Women Voters will monitor timing of responses with a stopwatch and signaling with a card when a candidate has 15 seconds remaining, and a red card when time has expired. If a candidate does not stop speaking, the mute feature will be turned on. We will now begin with opening statements. And our first opening statement will be from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hugo Diaz, I'm running for Newport City Council, 1st Ward. I'm a lifelong Newport resident, but more importantly, I'm a 38-year resident of the 1st Ward. My wife and I purchased a home in 1982. We've been taxpayers and residents of the 1st Ward since then. I attended Newport Public Schools K-12. My kids, we raised 3 sons in the city of Newport, all attended Newport Public Schools K-12. I'm a former elected member of the Newport School Committee. I served 13 years in the Newport School Committee. I'm a proud resident of the city of Newport. I support the schools. I support the city of Newport. I attended URI. I graduated in 76. I worked for the city of Newport for 30 years. I worked for the city of Providence for 10 years. And now I'm retired and I have some time on my hands and I've decided to run for public office. I don't feel that Newport is broken, but I do think there are a few things that might need to be tweaked. I've got a passion for the city of Newport, and now is the time that I've got some time. Now is the time for me to run for public office. Um, Not that I planned it, but COVID-19 is something that we need to address. Not that I planned it, but there is going to be a bond before the public on the new school, new high school, and expansion of Pell Elementary School. Having been on the school committee, if the public does approve that bond for the schools, I'm all ready to go and work very hard to make sure that the school construction is quality construction and the education needs are met for the city of Newport. Newport has other issues that it'll perpetually have to work on: parking, affordable housing for young and old.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
Good evening. I'm Angela McCalla, your First Ward Newport City Councilor. When I ran for City Council in 2018, my goal was to connect with the residents of the First Ward to understand the challenges they faced and their hope for our city. I ran because I wanted your concerns to be heard in city politics. Some of my first-term accomplishments are that I supported the bond issue for our schools, safe streets for our neighborhoods, protecting access to the waterfront, mobile food trucks, the Fair Chance Licensing Act, and a resolution condemning hate speech and the need for implicit bias training for all city employees. My vision for the city has 3 elements. The first is that the city must put the needs of the residents first. All economic development initiatives must be considered in the prism of how it will affect our residents and our neighborhoods before we allow any new projects. Second, we need to restore the quality of our public schools. We've let them slip into a state of disrepair that is simply unacceptable. We need to start by supporting our school construction bond this November. And third, we need to immediately create a plan to reduce tax burden for owner-occupied homes in Newport. Let us look immediately to put in some form of Homestead Exemption Act that can reduce the burden for our homeowning residents. There is much work to be done. I'd be honored to represent your voice for Newport City Council for a second term. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Paul Marshall.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Paul Marshall and I'm running for 3rd Ward City Council of Newport. I was born and raised in Newport. I'm a Rogers graduate, graduated with one of Hugo's sons. I'm a devoted husband to my wife, Charlotte. I'm an obsessed and yet loving father to my 17-month-old son, Forrest. I'm also a proud member of the city's planning board, where I've worked on projects pertaining to the North End Urban Master Plan, the Transportation Master Plan, Greening Complete Streets, and the Renewable Energy Initiative. I want to thank the current city council members, especially those in this forum, for seeing the value in both my resume and my passion for this city and electing me to such a position. I have 10+ years of seasonal hospitality work here in Newport, from working in the hot dog stand on Bannister's Wharf when I was 14 years old, all the way through college, and even part-time in 2018 and 19 when I was getting my master's degree in public policy at Brown University. After graduating from Rogers, I did leave Newport to pursue higher education at Hobart and William Smith colleges, which led me to working in New York City at a communications and marketing firm, which then led me to become the director of communications for Ski Utah, which is the marketing arm of a $1.3 billion winter tourism industry for the state. I have years of strategic communication around federal, state, and local initiatives, and I hope to use those experiences and extrapolate them to City Council. My 3 priorities have and always will be to examine every municipal decision through an equitable and just lens, to invest and improve our education system, and to help Newport be a leader in climate resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kate Leonard.
Thank you. I appreciate this forum because with the COVID pandemic, we've been unable to go to door to door. And I think that's to protect our citizens. And so this becomes a more important venue. I came to Newport as a little child, because my grandfather and all my relatives lived here. And my papu, as we called him, lived here, and he owned and operated the Star Lunch and the Satellite on Broadway. I finally moved here part-time, because I always wanted to. In 1978, when I was 21, I bought my first house and really saved to get it because I wanted to be here. Moved here full-time in 1995, and I was immediately elected to city council. I feel that I've been an advocate for the people of this ward beginning then, and I actually get calls from all over the city, which I think it's very important to respond to. When I was first elected in 95, Newport was called Zooport. And at that time, my face appeared on the cover of USA Today because of all the issues we were having and how I was working to resolve some of those issues. Since then, I've spent 25 to 30 hours a week committed to representing the constituents that call me and the constituents around town. I'm known to be available all the time.
Thank you. We will now hear from Charlie Holder.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charlie Holder. I'm running for the 2nd Ward seat for the City Council. I am currently the operator of Midtown Oyster Bar and Surf Club, both located downtown. I am an executive board member of Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Rhode Island Hospitality Association. 3 reasons that I'm running for City Council right now are: 1, I feel it's very important to have a city councilor that can relate to the residents of Newport. Someone who was born and raised, also educated in Newport, always in the 2nd Ward. I understand the importance of neighborhood safety and also the school bond and work that needs to be done at Rogers High School. As a representative of the business and the hospitality sector in the city, I think it's important to have someone on the council who has the knowledge and also the insight on how the most important sector economically in the city helps us operate. I also have the experience of being a leader. I lead over 150 employees right now, and I know that the decisions that are coming up in the next 2 years are going to affect us for the next 30 years at least. So we need someone who can help aid in these difficult decisions. I spent most of my life getting people to work together towards a common goal. I will continue to do so as a member of the City Council. I really feel I'm the best candidate to represent all interests of the residents, regardless of their demographics and their backgrounds. So vote for me on November 3rd. Thank you.
We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting. My name is Kim Salerno, and I'm running for Newport City Council, Ward 2. Newport is a beautiful place to live and visit, and I hope to provide experienced leadership in protecting our exceptional quality of life. I will advocate for protecting neighborhoods and residents first, for development that enhances the city, for a diversified economy that provides livable incomes and a sustainable tax base, and for climate change solutions that add value to our city. My skills are really suited to advancing these goals. I earned a Master of Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania, and I worked in that profession, then taught at the college level for 20 years. I now own an architectural design practice. In 2016, as the chairman of the planning board, I led the creation of the new and revised comprehensive plan. This policy document reflects our collective goals and aspirations, and we now live by it. Most recently, I provided leadership for the North End Urban Plan. This plan will provide guidance for developing the North End as it works to steward the city's vital character. It will serve the city for years to come. I ask you to consider my candidacy, and I ask for your vote. Thank you again.
Thank you. This concludes our opening statement portion of the forum. We will now move into the general questions. I will ask several questions that have been composed by the collaborating organizations. The question will appear on the screen. However, it may be paraphrased due to space. If needed, I can repeat the question. You will each have 90 seconds to respond. The first question is, how would you balance the needs of residents and visitors? And the first person to answer this question will be Hugo Diaz.
So Newport is a very popular, attractive place. People like to come in from out of town, and it's also a place where people live. I certainly would like to prioritize Newport for residents. It needs to be a safe place to live. It needs to be a comfortable place to live. It needs to be accommodating to residents. One of the things we've got to be careful about is, particularly in the summertime where people coming into town, they don't really have a vested interest in this town. They have a tendency to say, this is not my town. They kind of act out a little bit. We need to make sure that we have proper enforcement in town to keep the noise levels down. One of the other issues too, we have a lot of Airbnbs and so-called party houses. Particularly with those, I think we need to target the landlord. Some of these houses are purchased outright and just for the purpose of renting out I'm going to use the term party houses. What we need to do is we need to really put the pressure on the landlords and make them aware that the activities are just not compatible with neighborhood living.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
Thank you. So my stance on it is that Newport historically has done a really good job with promoting Newport as a premier destination spot, but we need to also be promoting it as a livable community. Newport has, and I've said this before, has always been kind of like a one-trick pony when it comes to our economy. And I think that, because of COVID, we can just kind of see the devastations that kind of happened here because of COVID. If we are going to have year-round residents, then we need to support items that year-round residents need. So we need to find tax relief for the few homeowners we have left. We need to also be supporting our school bond, and also understanding too that only 40% of our houses in Newport are owned by Newport residents. That is shocking. Not all renters too. We need to also understand that Newport, not all renters are also year-round residents as well. They are second homeowners, vacationers, and short-term college students in that sense. Again, we need to be really thinking about this from a global perspective and really supporting the needs of the year-round residents. Thanks.
Next, we will hear from Paul Marshall.
Thank you. I want to start off and say that when a city works for its residents, it works better for its visitors. As someone who's both worked in the hospitality industry on a local level, but also helped market winter tourism on a state level, I do truly understand the positive economic impact tourism can have. But I've also seen firsthand how the negative impact it's had on our neighborhoods here, traffic and congestion, housing, and year-round economy. There are many challenges with trying to balance both residents and visitors, and these challenges come with some hard thoughts and fixing them. But as I've sat on the planning board, I've worked on initiatives revolving Airbnb. I've worked on initiatives involving the transportation master plan, and I've been an active voice in trying to pass our school bond and promote education here. And I think those are three great steps to trying to put our residents first that will also benefit our visitors. Thank you.
We will now hear from Kate Leonard. Excuse me, you need to unmute.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Creating and keeping balance between residents and visitors can often be difficult. We've seen it very often. I think part of it is you have to define visitors. Visitors sometimes are day trippers, and that brings more traffic. Visitors are also people who stay in hotels and help our businesses. And a lot of the calls that I get, and I get plenty, deal with short-term visitors versus longer-term summer visitors, and how to be good neighbors. And I've, as part of that focusing, I can tell you I helped create the deputy zoning officer program and the community policing organization that's part of the police department to try to help that balance. If there are issues, we have to remember that the businesses depend on the visitors as well as the residents. First and foremost, I think that visitors are different than residents because the quality of life of residents in many people's eyes has deteriorated in the past 2 years. People want more enforcement. I think COVID is part of this. They want to understand how the areas they live in, like a general business zone, a limited business zone, a waterfront business zone, affect them and their quality of life, because residents live in all 3 districts. So that's a big part of how do you balance all this out. A lot of it is.
Thank you. We will now hear from Charlie Holder.
Yeah, this is something I've dealt with pretty much my whole life living in Newport and being in the hospitality arena. I've always looked at how do residents and visitors have to balance everything. You know, Newport's a great town. Who would not want to, you know, visit here or live here for any amount of time? I think there's something here for everybody. Now, how do we balance that with the residents and the visitors? You know, we have to make sure we have, for our residents, we have to have, you know, a fair tax bracket for them. Maybe it's a Homestead Act. Maybe it's getting better workforce housing, which is very tough to come by, which really limits a lot of people what they can do as far as where they can work. As far as, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that think I'm very pro hospitality and pro tourism just because I'm in the industry, but you know, I want to do it in a smart way. I don't think, you know, we should put a hotel on every waterfront spot in town. I don't think we need, you know, more and more, you know, restaurants or other hospitality associated industry businesses. We have to be smart about what we do. We have to take care of the residences and make sure there is a line of delineation between where the residences and neighborhoods are and where the business zone is. As far as Airbnbs, hopefully that's something we'll get into later. We can discuss that more, and also short-term rentals. But you know, I think all in all, the city has done a great job in balancing both, because let's not misunderstand. We do get a lot of money from our visitors.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
Thank you. I would begin to address this issue by looking at overlapping needs. If residents and tourists alike share needs, then those areas probably need immediate attention. Development and transportation planning come to mind. I hope to restore balance between these seemingly competing interests. Newport residents benefit from tourism revenues, but at what point do the costs of tourism, including frayed social fabric, diminished access to the water, and summer traffic, start to exceed these benefits? I will support measures that ultimately improve the quality of life for our residents, but always striving to strike a balance.
Thank you. Question 2. Climate change poses potential risk to the city. What specific measures should the council enact to mitigate that risk? And we will start with Paul Marshall.
Thank you. What a great question. I really appreciate it. As many people probably know or don't know, I currently own and operate a sustainability consulting firm that works on just this. I help manufacturers reduce their global carbon supply chain, their global carbon reduction strategy on their supply chain, and help with policy issues around environment. This can be overlaid into and implemented at a municipal level as well. And so this is one of the things that I hope to spearhead if elected. I think on one hand, the city can address climate change through resiliency action, which is sea level walls and flooding management, stormwater management. But if we really wanted to be leaders in climate resiliency, we would take it a step further. This would be taking on renewable energy initiatives to lower our carbon footprint on a municipal level. This would be improving public transit to reduce single car use. This would be adding green and complete streets to our plan by incentivizing bike and pedestrian use and safety. And as a whole, I think all of this can be done in a very conscientious and sustainable and equitable way. And I look forward to kind of helping build that, that process. Thank you.
We will now hear from Kate Leonard. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. All you have to do is drive on Wellington Avenue or some streets on the point like Marsh or Bridge and the swamp area to see that climate change and rising tides and Mother Nature are trying to take the filled land where swampy areas had been and now put houses on them. I've worked with with councils and pledged myself to do the following, and we've completed a lot of this on climate change. We had an inoperable pumping station on Wellington Avenue. We fixed it. We completed the program of enforcing and disconnecting water coming from gutters and going into the storm drains. We've installed floodgates on streets on the point. I personally identified that we had no sewer line at the toilets at King Park, and we've forced the city to put in sewer lines. The city's worked with Save the Bay. They've worked with the feds. We've cleaned up Gooseneck Cove. We've gone after the algae blooms. We're now looking at Almy Pond. The city installed a UV system across from Easton's Beach to try to take care of the first flush of rain and how it affects pollution. We also were able to work, and I personally did this with the Prince Foundation, to conserve the land around Spouting Rock. I got the donations, and that went to prevent more houses built across and around Almy Pond, so pollution is less of a factor and algae blooms. The city.
I thank you for your answer. Now we will hear from Charlie Holder.
Yeah, well, obviously climate change is it's a very difficult topic. You know, it's not something we're going to tackle in the next 2 years for sure, but it's always has to be something that we have to work on constantly, and that starts both with the residents and businesses. Just simple things as far as, you know, keeping our streets clean, more trash barrels out on the streets, I think is a big help. Trying to work with our traffic situation in town. I think we have a need for parking garages. There's not a question. We need to limit the amount of cars that have to drive through, especially in the downtown area. The Waterfront Business District, the Point section, obviously a lot of the places are built on landfill. There's some of the answers to how that we're gonna fix that up are really out of our realm at this time. But it's something that we have to just constantly work on. You know, it's tough to beat Father Time and Mother Nature. So all we can do is what we have, what we can control. And right now, that's really waste and water.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
Thank you. Newport's natural landscapes and great architectural heritage are unique and iconic, and climate change strategies should build on this strength. The beauty of the city should be leverage for climate change action. The challenge of sea level rise should be exploited to create new infrastructure that functions as beautification, recreation, and urban development. Newport should build infrastructure that is forward-looking, that confronts the critical problems and creates new icons for the built environment. And ultimately, this should be supported by outside investment. Examples include the meadowlands in New Jersey that operate as a giant sponge, soak up unwanted water, and function as recreation area. Or the hurricane barrier in New Bedford, that's a beautiful place to walk above the city. So again, leveraging the beauty of the city for new and iconic climate change strategies.
Thank you. We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you. Am I unmuted here? Yes. As much as I hate studies because mostly they cost money and they sit on shelves and collect dust, I think I need to see a study on this. I need to know specifically what the specific impacts of climate change are for the city of Newport. We do have a lot of low-lying areas very close to sea level. Some may be below sea level. But I really like to see the specific impacts, and then we can address the specific areas. There can certainly be stormwater control methods that can help, specific stormwater control methods that would help, and also land modifications that can be customized for specific needs. One of the other impacts that we should be aware of is the more frequent and more severe storms that will be occurring in the future. That might lead us to rewriting or formulating a different emergency management plan, emergency response plan. And one of the specific things that I really would like to see is the impact on our drinking water reservoirs. I happen to know that there's a few feet elevation difference between saltwater, seawater, and freshwater drinking water at Easton's or North Pond.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
Thank you. The reality is that we are seeing more effects caused by climate change that is resulting in more frequent and intense storms, which is causing urban flooding to happen. These floodings are also affecting a lot of our critical infrastructure. From an economic standpoint in Newport, 53% of all acreage in Newport touches floodplains. Half of those parcels are residential, while the other remaining parcels are a mix of commercial and open space. Over 500 businesses are in the flood zone. As a person who serves as the council liaison to the Energy and Environments Commission, I was able to make essential connections and are happy to report that the city is now part of the Rhody Resilience Plan, which is the state's first comprehensive plan for climate resilience action plan that specifically tries to address a plan to protect critical infrastructures to the city. The city will also begin to develop plans for climate resilience and adaptation plans, and then work with the infrastructure bank to tie on how the infrastructure bank will qualify us for more monies. This is one way that we are beginning to address this. It should be noting, helping, for me, I help to pass and support the beginnings of the Green and Complete Streets Ordinance, which minimizes and reduces energy costs for the community. Green Streets also provides accommodations for greener and healthier modes of transportation. And there are millions of dollars in both federal and state grants that can help address this. We should actually be looking into actually hiring a grant writer to begin to start recouping these monies.
Thank you for your response. We will now move to question 3. If you were relocating a company and employees to Newport, give the city a letter grade, A through F, on how well you feel we succeed in meeting criteria to entice new business to town, and explain. We will now start with Charlie Holder.
Okay, new businesses in town, that's, first, it's kind of vague. It really depends on the business that you want to bring into town. And at this time right now, I don't know what kind of business would want to come into Newport, to be honest with you, unless you're in the hospitality sector. With the moratorium that is put down on the north end, and talk about even putting it citywide, that's really pushing away a lot of people that want to come down here and open a business. I was just reading about the tech company that decided to move, locate to Fall River rather than Newport, just because they got a little better of a tax break on there. So, if I had a business brought to Newport, my first question is, okay, where are my employees are going to live? Because as the workforce housing, as I mentioned earlier, is very little. It's not cheap to live here, that's for sure. Also, traffic, as far as, if it's something that I'm going to be, do I need delivery trucks and trying to get, cars in and out of town is very difficult right now as well. Also, I just think the city itself is not really for new businesses at this time. And I think it's very difficult for someone that want to bring a business in town.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
Thanks again. I wouldn't give a letter grade, I'd give a whole report card because different sectors obviously have very different needs. Generally though, businesses require an educated workforce, community memory and skills, the physical urban amenities sought by startups, a cultural environment that attracts innovators, and obviously an improved regulatory landscape. As a small business owner, I understand those issues. Broad-based economic development demands a comprehensive approach. Newport economic development should work in concert with state economic goals and build on our strengths, promote the blue economy such as marine trades, and foster innovation within our existing capacity. Thank you.
We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you. I'm assuming that the company that would be coming into Newport is something that's compatible with the city, not some large corporation that has tremendous needs for resources, energy, water, wastewater. I'm thinking more in terms of a high-tech company, technology companies. I think they do very well here. A letter grade, again, I don't think Newport's broken, certainly needs to be tweaked. Maybe I could give it a B, but some of the things that we do need to improve, parking is an issue. And also, if a company is going to move here, it's going to want to have a workforce that has the capacity to provide the technology services if that's what they're providing. We also need to have affordable housing. We're not going to attract a workforce, or people aren't going to come, young people aren't going to come to the city of Newport if it's just out of their price range. One of the things I do want to mention, I don't necessarily believe in giving tax incentives. I think we need viable companies, successful companies, and I think Newport is very attractive on its own. It's a very attractive and it's a very desirable place to be. I don't think we need to offer tax incentives, but we do need to perhaps develop our own technology infrastructure. And in providing those things, I think Newport will be an attractive place for businesses to operate.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
I just want to kind of sort of echo the sentiments of some of what some of the members have expressed. I agree that when businesses are coming and they're vetting and they're looking to do business in any area, that they're going to be looking for places that their employees can live and expand their families. They're going to be looking for resources that their employees can essentially capitalize on, such as strong public school systems. And also too, I think the biggest, most emerging concept that we need to be thinking about is fiber optics for better broadbands. So, thank you.
We will now hear from Paul Marshall.
Thank you. A lot of what I'm going to say right now is going to resonate with and repeat a lot of what was already said. So I applaud the other candidates for highlighting some very key attributes to what could help improve our economy. I think overall, we just need to utilize the assets we have here. Newport is a wonderful place to live. It has a wonderful, diverse population, and it has people that are eager to grow. And that is something that you don't get everywhere. But there are a few areas that I think the city can invest in to help attract some new long-term and year-round businesses. First is, if I'm a small business owner, if I wanted to start growing and I wanted to attract employees, we need to invest in our education. That's going to be number one. We need to also look into workforce housing, as has been an example, has already been said. We need to address transportation issues within the city, which we are already working on addressing. And lastly, I agree that fiber optics and expanding on broadband can really help attract at least blue economy or blue tech businesses or any type of tech business, because it's essential to their growth, and it's something that they know that the city has invested in, and it has their back on. Thank you.
We will now hear from Kate Leonard.
I have 25 years of work in education and department head. I can tell you that in my real estate work, I often get people coming in from Silicon Valley, from New York, from Boston. A lot of them are business owners, corporate owners. They're looking at houses. They want to relocate. They work remotely. I can tell you that we presently have 4 CEOs of major pharmaceutical companies who have moved here and are working remotely. We have those people here that are willing to help us. I can tell you that what they look for in qualified employees, because I hear it every day, is the fact they want people that work together. They want people to have they want the schools to have strong technology curriculum. They want to be able to hire qualified employees. They want people to, they want the city to help. They know that their employees will need good housing that they can afford. I think we as a city ought to, and I talk to the city manager all the time, we need a strong economic development director. And that director would woo companies, work with companies, so that we can bring them in. We have so many people here that most people don't know about that would love to bring businesses, but they're looking for many of the same things that other candidates have said, but we have to reach out. They're not going to just knock on our doors. They ask me all the time. I got a call today.
Thank you. Now we will move to question 4. To ensure the preservation of Newport's heritage and character, how do you propose to balance the preservation of waterfront access and economic development? And we will start with Kate Leonard.
I couldn't hear part of it, I'm sorry.
I can repeat it. To ensure the preservation of Newport's heritage and character, how do you propose to balance the preservation of waterfront access and economic development?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I have to say that I think Newport lost a lot of that. I'm very sad to say that. I think that as economic development and more businesses came here, and we do have a strong tourism economy, the city should have really worked harder, it was before my time, to have public access and preserve the character. That's how America's Cup was created and all the historic buildings wiped out, which still bothers me. I can tell you that to have that balance, we have to work together. I was one of the trustees of the Hamilton Improvement Foundation, and we started with the Harbor Walk at King Park, hoping that others in the city would say, oh, I'm on the waterfront, and I'm going to contribute the same to keep that going. And in terms of the character of Newport, I think that we have to realize that the small town feel that we had has now become very commercialized with Airbnb. And I think we have to work towards protecting the lifestyle and the quality of life we have and put that together with how do you create more jobs so that people and families can come here and exist in neighborhoods.
Thank you. We will now hear from Paul Marshall.
Thank you. Since the start of my campaign, I've always said that I want to help protect, preserve, and even grow, when possible, public access to the waterfront. But I'd like to expand on this a little bit more, and I'm happy to have this forum to do this. While it's been a privilege and an honor to be on the planning board, I again want to thank the city council members here in this forum for electing me to that position. But I've been faced with some personal frustrations on how the city's handled our waterfront development. My frustrations are in how the comprehensive land use plan is worded. The plan was written and approved by some of the city council members, specifically in this forum, in 2017, and has directly provided language to promote and encourage tourism development and economic development on our waterfront. This has left my hands legally tied when it comes to voting. If we as a community want to actually accomplish and change things and put ordinance in place to limit this growth, it needs to come from a representative who is willing to put themselves out there, be present at city council meetings, and represent the needs of his or her constituents. I think moving forward, I can provide that for the third ward, and I know that is a huge issue and a complaint that many constituents have reached out for, and I'm happy to be present and represent them. Thank you.
We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
Thank you. I agree again with the sentiments of Paul in regards to, I think that we need to, as a city, be continuing to look further into our policies and be setting our policies for ones that protect the interests of our residents. I do think we can't have development without lifting our community from also a social equity standpoint. We need to make sure that our communities, our policies, reflect that while reducing disparities, while fostering places that are healthy and vibrant, along with residents' need and fundamental right for access for waterfront. I actually look at the North End Urban Development Plan as one that does need a closer look and a closer lens in regards to those expressed sentiments. I have been an advocate for balancing, again, economic development in regards to the North End, Ward 1, with very real needs of all of our residents. And in addition to my frequent conversations and meetings with the City Hall staff, the NBBJ consultant groups, the Planning Board, the State Department of Transportation, and with our legislative team, I have been a particular watchdog and always bringing forth the concerns of our Ward 1 residents. I do plan on continuing.
I thank you. We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you. I think, well, we live on an island, so obviously I think waterfront access is very important. Quite a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Hawaii, and they're on an island too, and waterfront access is very important there as well. And what they did is they required the developers, they actually prohibited the developers from owning any of the property at the waterline. Not only that, they required the developers to provide access points. Not only were they access points, they were parking areas, parking lots, changing stations, showers for people to get at no charge to the waterfront. What I would do is suggest that if we want to maintain waterfront access, we have to get in at the point of development and put it on the developers to somehow maintain public waterfront access so that we all have access to the waterfront. As far as economic development, unfortunately, that's driven by the market. And if there's a market for hotels, hotels are going to come in. If there's a market for restaurants, it's going to be restaurants. It's going to be the hospitality industry, which over the course of years has kind of pushed aside those other diverse waterfront activities, fishing, boat building, things like that. What we can do is do what we can to kind of promote a diverse economy, particularly at the waterfront. As best we can. But again, the market's the market, and that's why we have the hotels and the hospitality industry the way it is.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
Yes, the waterfront is developing quickly, and this has caused concern among the public. The proliferation of hotel development has caused people to question how we how we treat the waterfront. The building code prioritizes flood safety, and this is creating a landscape of buildings on stilts, where ground floors are increasingly less occupied. This will have implications on our commerce and quality of life if it's left unfettered. What the city needs is a waterfront master plan where dimension and use are reconsidered and where community benefits are put in place to protect public access and a public interest in the waterfront.
Thank you. We will now hear from Charlie Holder.
Yeah, so waterfront access has always been I think it should always be a right to the public to be able to access the waterfront. And I think groups like Friends of the Waterfront have always done a tremendous job in fighting to keep those rights alive. I think we kind of missed the boat long before most of us were around here back in the 80s with the developing of some condominiums on the waterfront that are just basically roadblocks in any more development for the waterfront. There's only a couple spots left, on the harbor side to build on, and they're all privately owned. So it's, as Hugo said, the market's going to drive what we can do there. I think the big thing is with any new either waterfront business district plan or the comprehensive land use plan, we have to make sure we allow public access, to the waterfront, and I think that would be something that the public will back up. I know a lot of people have complained about the new hotels that have been built downtown in the last year or so, but at least they're bringing in jobs. They're bringing in money to the city, as opposed to some of the condo units that are really not even full right now. So we have to just be really careful about how we go about putting in what we want to do for an economic development, especially downtown on the water.
Thank you. Question 5. Besides the topics that have been raised in the previous questions, what issue specific to your ward would you want your voters to know you will address? We will now start with Angela McCalla.
Okay, thank you. So I think one of the topics that I thought we were going to talk about was racism. The reality of the situation is that there are no non-racist cities or towns in America, and Newport is not exempt from that. I think that we need to be looking at things from an equitable lens and understanding that we need to be lifting our community and protecting those that are most susceptible and most vulnerable. I think that you all know where I stand in the position as I have spoken through resolution in regards to supporting reformation in the criminal justice system with the Fair Chance Licensing Act, denouncing hate speeches, and calling for all city employees to complete an implicit bias training and ensuring voting equity and opportunity to those who are already marginalized. I think that we still need to continue this conversation. Newport, quite frankly, I have been fighting for this on some of the very basic issues, and we need to continue this conversation as a city and as a community that cares. I will continue to raise this issue. I will continue to look at our policies from this lens in order to lessen the burdens of an already marginalized society. Thank you.
We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Oh, certainly looking at the first ward, I think one of the most important issues is the the upcoming development of up to 30 to 50 acres coming off the bridge. Charlie Holder mentioned something at the beginning that really kind of struck. He said, you know, the decisions made in the next couple of years are going to last for at least the next 30 years. And if you focus on the development of land in the north end, that's land that quite a bit of land that doesn't normally get freed up in the city of Newport. It's very difficult to find large pieces of land. We searched and searched and searched to find a land to put a school on, and we couldn't find anything really big enough, and that's why Thompson ended up where it is on Broadway. But we need to look very carefully at that 30 to maybe up to 50 acres of development when we do the ramp project at the bridge and redeveloping the casino property there. It has to be done right. It has to accommodate the residents. It must fit in with the scale of Newport. We really need to get that done right. That's very, very important. It needs to be pedestrian friendly. It needs to increase the tax base. There's lots of things that needs to do. And again, we talked a little bit about the developer being responsible, maintaining access to the waterfront. We need to step in here and make sure the developer is responsible and provides community needs as well as the development of their properties.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kim Salerno.
So when this campaign began, I dropped off door tags at about 3,000 houses, and I was really struck by the number of lock boxes on all the houses. I think that there is probably nothing that is more emblematic of the fraying of social fabric than an empty house with a lockbox, a sense that you don't know your neighbors and you don't know who's coming and going. I think short-term rentals are probably the most important issue for second warders. But short-term rentals have pros and cons for communities. The planning board has been seeking a balance between the costs and benefits of Airbnb for almost 2 years, beginning by creating meaningful definitions to the zoning code and calling for the position of an enforcement officer, and also documenting the locations of permitted short-term rentals. We arrived at a place where we generally support homeowner occupied hosting while being sensitive to neighborhood parking conditions and allowing greater flexibility in business zones. But my issue to watch is the regulation of short-term rentals.
Thank you. We will now hear from Charlie Holder.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just jump on the back of what Kim said. With Airbnbs and short-term rentals, we really need to get a better hold on who is allowed to basically profit off unnamed guests. Really, if hotels and any other business for that matter, I'll bring up a liquor license. You know, if I have to buy a liquor license, there's only a certain amount. Why should somebody that can Airbnb a room or an apartment or what have you not have to technically be licensed to do so? I just don't think that is right, and we need to do a better job of cracking down on those short-term rentals and Airbnbs. In the Broadway sector and even on Bellevue Avenue, we need to do a better job of promoting businesses, better street lighting, safer crosswalks, safer sidewalks. Great job was done with the Broadway streetscape to make that walk a little bit better. But the businesses, it's up to themselves to put lights on trees and have things of that nature. The Newport needs to do a better job of lighting up those sidewalks and lighting up those areas. And the biggest thing that I've really seen, you know, in for this is for Ward 2 especially, is just traffic safety. I can't, how many times people have just run through stop signs, whether it's a car or a bike, or not being able to see somebody in a crosswalk because there's too many cars parked on the side of the streets. You know, we really need to do a better job of protecting our pedestrians and our residences in those areas where they should be safe all the time.
Thank you. We will now hear from Kate Leonard.
Thank you. I've been fighting the fight for 20 years, and everybody can tell you that. I go back to 1995 and we were Newport. So I can tell you one of the biggest things in Ward 3 is Airbnb, the proliferation of Airbnb and the lack of enforcement. And a lot of that has to do with the judges and the courts. I think that's huge. The traffic in Ward 3 is worse and worse and worse. I put in a recent resolution to deal with that. I think that those are two huge things. When it comes, I think we need meaningful development where you don't have three houses that go on what used to be one lot. And I can tell you that the comp plan that's been in existence, yes, and was redone, was with public input. And for years and years, I've always said that it needed to have more changes to it than we have now. I think that one of the things in this ward too is for me to continue to network so that we can get donations and companies and people who are here to help us get there by contributing and helping the city. But the third ward is the most inundated with Airbnb, with traffic, much so than any other ward. And I've tried to deal with it, and it's going to continue to be an issue for a long time unless we can enforce it.
Thank you. We will now hear from Paul Marshall.
Kind of on the heels of Ms. Leonard, I think that enforcement and actionable items in what the city is putting out is what's necessary and what the voters of the third ward want to be addressed. I think when the city council enacts a resolution and passes a resolution, that it should be on them to make sure that that is enforced or executed. I think that aligns with the comprehensive land use plan. We have policies and goals in there, and we're up in 2021 or 22. We'll be up on a 5-year evaluation on that plan, and it'll be interesting to see how many of those goals and policies have been executed. We have a North End Urban Master Plan about to be released to the public, but in public debate. We have a Transportation Master Plan RFP out there. We have a few other RFPs and plans out there. And my goal, if elected, would be to make sure that we execute these, that what we come out of these plans with are actionable items that are cost effective and actually provide value to our citizens and to our third ward residents. And I think that we need as a city to be more proactive on these agenda items, and that's where I align with. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our general forum question portion. We will now start with the yes or no questions. I am going to ask a few yes or no questions for you to either agree or disagree with by raising your hand. Leave your hands raised until I call out the names of those who agreed or disagreed. You need to raise your hand one way or the other. After I've asked the third question, candidates will be given 90 seconds to explain or expand on their response. The first question: should the North End Urban Plan proposal move forward as presented to the Newport Council? If you agree with the statement, raise your hand.
Can you explain what that means? Are we talking about the one that was just released to the public?
Yeah, that was already done.
So, does everybody understand the question now?
No, unfortunately.
It's not your fault. It should actually be null and void, Cheryl.
Well, we're gonna skip that one.
Can I say something here?
Yeah.
I think the way the question was worded I know you want a yes or no, but I think what everybody has to understand is that that process has not moved to fruition. It hasn't gone everywhere so that the public has been able to put all their insights.
I think that was my point as well, is that this is a,
So maybe I could clarify. The plan was received by the council and referred to the planning board. It will now come to the planning board and it will be open for public input. That is a lengthy process and it'll involve multiple meetings and, you know, a lot of conversation, and then it will move to the council.
Correct.
correct. And so with that, with the way that this question is worded, it's still within public process, so it shouldn't be, it's not a yes or no question.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the second. Regardless of the impending vote outcome on the Rogers Pale bond, would you support the study of a regionalized high school for the future? Yes or no? If you would, raise your hand. So that everyone will know, Kim Salerno, Charlie Holder, Paul Marshall, and Kate Leonard voted in agreement to this. If you disagree, raise your hand. Those that disagree are Hugo Diaz and Angela McCalla. The third and final question. Do you feel the ward system supports more focused representation of constituencies' needs? If you do, raise your hand.
Can you repeat that question again?
Do you feel the ward system supports more focused representation of constituencies' interests? Let it be known that all six candidates are in agreement with this. Kim Salerno, Charlie Holder, Paul Marshall, Kate Leonard, Hugo Diaz, and Angela McCalla. Now, if you would like to expand on, even though I already know you have talked about the first statement, but if you have anything you want to expand on with these three questions, this will be your opportunity to do so. And we will start with Kim Salerno.
Thank you.
And
I
you
just
have
want to
90
be
seconds.
clear. I support the school bond unequivocally, and I'm confident that it will pass. But should it not pass, I believe that a regionalization study could be fruitful. And so that's my clarification for that answer. That's it.
All right, Charlie Holder.
Yeah, so on the school regionalization study, I'm definitely for doing a study on regionalization. I am not for regionalization at this time. I am for the school bond. I think we definitely need a new high school at Rogers, and also the expansion of Pell School. And the reason I'm for the study, at least, because I know in a few years, even though Middletown, the town council as it's currently put together, was adamant about not working with Newport, they're going to be facing a similar situation in the very near future with their high school as well. So, you know, it's always something you want to keep open, and it could be what is best for the school children of tomorrow.
Kate Leonard. You need to unmute.
We all know that Rogers High School has to be addressed. That's a given. The next question that comes up is who's going to vote for it and will it pass? And that the voters will decide. I think that the big thing we all have to say to ourselves is, where do we go so that every single student can reach his or her highest potential. That's my big thing from the beginning. If the vote, I'm not opposed to building a new school, but I think that the voters are going to decide, and that we all have to look at it and say what's best for the students. And I would like to see that happen. We'll all find out at the polls, but bottom line is something needs to be addressed, and how do we do it? And we want to make sure that whatever we do is something that benefits the students. That's number one.
Thank you. We will now hear from Paul Marshall.
Thank you. I'm also going to address the regionalization question. First, the only reason I raised my hand on this one is because I'm open to, and I want to explain this from the very beginning. I think that the city should we should be promoting the school bond that's on the table right now. We should be focusing on that, and we should be trying to get that passed. I think I'll roll back the clock a little bit. In 2018, 84.1% of Newporters voted to pass the school infrastructure bond on a state level. We passed a $250 million bond on a state level that already state taxpayers we're paying through our state taxes. Currently, it's been estimated that the Rogers High School will cost $76 million to Band-Aid while we do a regionalization study or any formal thing if the bond doesn't pass. If we pass this $100 million bond right now, we have a guaranteed from the Rhode Island Department of Education to get 52.5% of our money back, which means that we will be building a new school for $48 million, which is a fraction of the price of band-aiding Rogers as it currently stands. After we've invested in our schools and invested in our students and invested in our community, we then can talk to Middletown or our neighboring communities about regionalization, because we will have the upper hand and we will be able to leverage our success as a community. So first we need to pass the bond, then we can talk about regionalization. Thank you.
We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
Thank you. I'm also going to clarify in regards to my response. The reality of the situation is that the council voted 5-2 to put the bond question to the voters, and I just think that we need to be able to let our voters decide. The reality is as well, this conversation for regionalization has been happening since the first comprehensive land use plan was enacted in 1985. We are literally deemed the worst infrastructure in the state, and we cannot be an international destination and have subpar school facilities. I mean, we cannot wait. We cannot continue to penalize our kids. The time is now. The time is now to act and to invest in our children.
Thank you. We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you. I'll address the ward system first. I do think the ward system, maybe not on a school committee level, but on a city council level, I think it does have a lot of merit so that a council can focus on issues that pertain to a particular ward. Some of the wards are a little bit different than others. The North End being, one in focus right now with all the development. Now let me focus on the regionalization study. I would oppose a study because I'm not a big fan of studies. I think they cost money and they collect dust, truly. But the problem we have with the regionalization is the community's not coming on board. The first thing we have to do is we have to get the communities to come on board. We got to get the spirit up. If Middletown and Portsmouth says, yeah, this is something we think is really valuable, then we can take the next step. But I think we're jumping the gun to do a regionalization study when we've gotten, as my understanding is, the Newport City Council got a very cool reception when they approached the Middletown Town Council regarding regionalizing the school facilities. So at this point, as far as the study goes, no, I would oppose it. As far as the high school goes, the bond for the high school, originally I was doubtful because of the cost, but having talked to a few people within the city, the cost may be doable. And if we go and create a new high school, that may make the regionalization issue moot. But that needs to be done right. So we'll find out in November what our next step is going to be after the voters make the decision on a high school and an expansion of the elementary school in the city of Newport.
Thank you to each of you. We have now concluded the yes and no portion of the forum, and we will now begin closing statements. Again, remember that you have 90 seconds for your closing statement. And we will begin with Kim Salerno.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting the event. I just want to recap by stating that my educational and professional experience would add value to any leadership job. My priorities are centered on quality of life, and these are developed from years of involvement in civic and community work and through interacting with my neighbors. Volunteering is the best way to listen and learn, and I volunteered a lot. At the City Council, no one does anything alone. Councilors must work together to accomplish things. I have a track record of turning public interaction and engagement into meaningful steps forward, and I hope to continue to serve the residents of Newport, and I ask you for your vote. Thank you.
We will now hear from Charlie Holder.
Yeah, thank you again for this forum tonight. It's very informative, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. So during tonight's discussion, I know we've highlighted many issues that face our city, but it's important that we have leadership on the council that has the interests of all the residents in mind. There's a lot of divisiveness in the world right now. I mean, you just see that on the presidential debate the other night. And the way our current council is constituted is very divided as well. I really feel we need leaders in place that will work together and bring the community together as one, putting all personal agendas aside. I think I'm very qualified to be that candidate to represent the 2nd Ward. I hope that come November 3rd, you feel the same way. Communication is very important to me. So please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Directly, my cell phone number is 401-480-9079. You can email me at charlie@midtownoyster.com. It's up there on the screen. I don't sleep much, and my employees can tell you that, so I'm always around. So thank you, and good night, and good luck to all the candidates.
We will now hear from Kate Leonard.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that regionalization discussion between Newport City Council and Portsmouth and Middletown councils did not happen. We had a resolution passed to do that, but it was never called to a meeting by the mayor. And then I can say that I think it's important for someone on the city council, and I've been doing it for years, to work with others. I can tell you that that's the only way things get done, not divisiveness, not ugly behavior. And I can tell you that I have worked, and many of the council members with me, with the Quidnack Island Land Trust to preserve parks, Friends of the Waterfront to try to get more public access. I've worked with DEM, CRMC to try to get cleanup of Almy Pond and Gooseneck Cove and so forth like that. And I lobby. I've got a big mouth. Some people like me, some don't. Friends of King Park. If you want things done, you have to pull in people and work together, and that's how things get done for the betterment of this community. That's what I've been working for. That's what I want to continue to do. So I like the fact that I can get on the phone and 24/7 I can call somebody or text them and get an organization to come forth if I need help in this ward. And wards are very different from at large because I'm the only person on the city council now in Ward 3. So a lot of calls come this way. And therefore, I hope to continue what I'm doing. I thank everybody for running, and I hope our
Thank you. We will now hear from Paul Marshall.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I wish everybody the best of luck at the polls. I think Newport This Week for putting this on, and everybody for volunteering their time to allow our constituents and our residents to find out a little bit more about everybody. I want to then also tell you that I promise to be responsive and proactive and present and collaborative if I'm elected to Third Ward. I have years of experience on doing environmental policy, on doing state level, federal level, and local policy. I volunteer my time as well into the community. I've worked in the hospitality industry. I have a small business, and I'm invested in this community, and I have a passion for it. Lastly, I want to remind everybody that that we have 4 more days left to register to vote. Ending of registering to vote is on October 4th. The last day to request a mail-in ballot is October 13th. The emergency voting at City Hall will be October 14th through November 2nd. And then Rogers High School and Newport Public Library will be open for polling and voting on November 3rd. I thank you for your support and ask for your vote. And I appreciate your time. Think local.
Thank you. We will now hear from Angela McCalla.
My campaign message during 2018's campaign for City Council was your choice for a voice. As I walked through the neighborhoods of Ward 1, I met many residents who spoke to me about the changes taking place in Newport, the big hotels, the tourism economy, the need for a new high school and expansion of our elementary school, the rising costs for housing, of our housing for year-round residents. I promised residents that if elected, I would be the voice for the residents of Ward 1. I believe I have kept that promise to the voters in my ward, and I look forward to being elected for a second term to continue to advocate for all Newport residents. Thank you.
We will now hear from Hugo Diaz.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank everybody involved in putting on this forum. Nothing happens on its own. It happens because people make it happen. And I particularly like to thank those people behind the scenes that we don't see and don't know, but they've all had a part in putting something like this on. Newport's a very dynamic place. It's got a very healthy political environment. You can see that by the number of people that want to run for public office. I'm at a point in my life where I'm retired. I've got time to devote. This is what I choose to do. I've got a passion for the city of Newport, and I'm hoping to be elected first ward councilman. I've spent 13 years as an elected member of the Newport School Committee. Enjoyed most of it, not all of it, but most of it was very enjoyable. And I know a great deal about Newport schools. Former city employee, although it was quite a few years ago now, but I have a good idea how city departments operate and interact as well. Going door to door and collecting signatures, the common theme I heard, people love their neighborhoods, they love Newport, but they want to keep it small and manageable. I think that's key. Anything that happens in the city of Newport needs to be within the Newport scale. We're not a big, huge city. We're a small city. We're an accessible city. People love that. They love their small neighborhoods. So we need to be very aware of development and where the city's heading in the future. Again, small, manageable. Other big issue in the city is affordable housing. We're not going to have a city if people can't afford to come here. Housing is getting very expensive. I'm not sure how a young person starting out today can afford a house in the city of Newport. And again, we need to attract businesses, desirable businesses, businesses that fit into the Newport climate, good viable businesses, and that'll help increase our tax base.
Thank you. This concludes our forum for this evening. It's been my pleasure to serve as the moderator for this evening. And I'd like to thank each of the candidates for coming and taking the time out to share their desires and their beliefs for the city of Newport. I also would like to thank the viewers and the listeners for listening and to this forum. And I ask that you would be on the lookout for the next forum. Again, I wish the candidates success in their campaigns, and it's been a pleasure. Good night.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. Good night.